Welcome back. My name is Julius Colley, Work Readiness Instructor for Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance. Thanks for participating today and are part of our Job Hunt 101 series, Work Readiness Workshop. This part of our segment will be dealing with the interviewing process. And I'd like again to welcome my guest today, and we want to keep this program going. Interviews are very important. Why? Because this is a part of our networking skills. It's something that we have to do. We have to go before that employer, him, her, or that panel, and we have to introduce the most important product of our life, and that's ourselves. We have to become a salesman. We have to sell this product. And in selling this product, there are stages of interviews, and we call it networking, that first stage. And when I say networking, what would be the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, networking, I feel, is when you're meeting different people and different individuals and you're introducing yourself for the first time to that person and getting that person's information and knowing who that person is that you're meeting.
Excellent. Excellent answer. Because a lot of times opportunity is there, but we just don't go and network and get that opportunity. The information is there. The leadway is there. The guidance is there. The tips are there. It's our job to make sure that we come out of that comfort zone and go over and do what we need to do in order to network with individuals that can possibly help us gain gainful employment. And this is something that a lot of people have problems with. We do not have any problems discussing our work problems or discussing interview techniques with people that are well known to us. But people that are not well known to us, but maybe know people that are well known to us, those are the people that we shy away from. And sometimes that is what we call a knock on the door, a door of opportunity. So we need to make sure that we pursue that pathway. Also, in the interview, preparing for the interview, one of the first things that I think an individual should do is get themselves ready. A lot of individuals think that looking for a job, setting up for an interview is just going out there doing the footwork. No. You have to sit down with yourself and find out, first of all, what it is that I need to do to get prepared for this interview. I would suggest that, number one, that you find out what type of companies that you would like to apply for. And you need to find out, basically, what type of script am I going to use today in presenting myself. Also, you need to find out what type of questions, general questions, that I think would be asked today. I wish we could not be realistic today and say that we know the question that's going to be asked to us on the interview, but that's impossible. But we can say there are some general questions that will be asked on an interview. So that means that I have to do some research before I actually get to that research. So other than finding out all the information you can about the company that you are going to apply for, because you possibly know one of those questions are going to be, what do you know about our organization? Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that this is a question that we're going to get an A+ on. We're going to get 99.9% on that question. So what are one of the other areas that you think that we need to cover other than doing company research?
The dress attire that you plan on wearing to interview, what would you recommend would be a proper dress attire for interviewing?
I would say formal dress. I would say that for young men, you want to make sure that you have on a suit, maybe the bluish, black, or gray with the white background, or maybe a shaded background, a lower type of temperament, nothing flashy. Jewelry, we probably want to leave home. And females, I would probably say we want to watch and make sure our dress length. We want to make sure that we're covered up as much as possible in a professional manner. We don't want to leave too much open. We want to make sure that we leave all of the bling bling jewelry home, just conservative, maybe one ring, your watch, and a small bracelet. We want to leave the big loop earrings that some say sexy or whatever. We want to leave those type of things home. I also would recommend that closed-toe shoes, possibly stockings. We want to make sure that it's stockings that maybe match the texture of your legs. We want to make sure that it's not a loud color stockings, but something professional, something mild. Also, we want to make sure that when we're going on that interview, I always say, dress according to the situation. Dress according to the occasion and you can't go wrong. Young men, I always give advice, you can never go wrong by wearing a tie. I'm a firm believer, and even though it's in a lot of the organizations and in the corporate world, dress down day. I'm a firm believer, a tie is a dress down day for me, because you never know who you're going to be running into or who you have to represent and when or where you have to go and represent the organization that you're working for. And truly, you are a very important organization sitting here. So you want to represent yourself in a very professional manner. Thank you very much. That brings me to thinking about the different types and different stages of interview. I believe that there's what we call an opening. A lot of people don't understand. Interview starts from the time that you get in your car, from the time that you get on that bus, from the time that you get on that elevator, to the time that you get to that receptionist desk and present yourself, from the time that you actually sit in that chair. That's called an opening. We have to first realize we have to know how to present ourselves. Firm handshake, good eye contact, smiling face. And we have to make sure that when we present ourselves, we want to present ourselves in a very, very positive manner. We want to present ourselves with a very professional type of atmosphere. We want to present ourselves with a strong type of concept of, I know who I am and I'm the right person for this job. Are there any stages that you can think of that maybe need to be mentioned today?
Would add to that good posture.
Yes, ma'am. That
Really
means
speaks
that
loud.
brings us to possibly that chair. Am I right? We want to make sure that when we're sitting in that chair, we want to make sure that we follow directions first. A lot of times when that individual asks you to have a seat, I don't know why we take that a little further by saying they meant move the chair. No, it means follow directions, have a seat. We want to make sure we have excellent body posture sitting in that chair. We want to sit back. We want to sit upright. We want to make sure that our feet are flat on the floor. We want to make sure, young ladies, that if you are wearing a dress, you want to make sure that you're covered up. It's okay to cross the feet. It's okay for that. It's okay to hold your hands together, especially if you talk with your hands, because this is something, sometimes I'm an eye catcher. I usually follow hands. And can you imagine about 10 minutes after that, man, we need to take a break. So we want to make sure that we're conscious of that and aware of that. We want to make sure, because that's part of that interview, hand gestures. Are there any more tips that you can give me on that part, that stage one of that interview?
I would add that it's best to be honest, because if the interview does not match the resume, it's over.
Yes, ma'am. I fully agree. And that brings us to that part of the response part of answering the questions. Earlier, we talked about possibly some of the questions that are asked on that interview as it relates to generalization questions. Because again, we do not know what these individuals are going to ask us, but we want to be honest as possible. I can assume that they're going to ask us such questions as, tell me about yourself. You need to be ready. You've been living with yourself for X amount of years. That means that I'm going to get an A+ on that answer. Also, you know, they're going to ask you, what do you know about our organization? What can you tell us about Tampa Bay Workforce Alliance or the organization that you're applying for? You want to make sure that maybe before your interview the week before, in that research, walk up to the counter. A lot of these organizations are social service type of organizations. They help individuals become self-sufficient. You can walk up and say, is it possible that I can get a brochure of your organization? Is it possible that I can get a copy of your last year's annual report so I can do some research? Because before I walk in there and sit in that chair, I want to know your retention rate. I want to know what your organization is all about. What have you done for the community in the last past 5 years? These are some of the things that's going to help you answer that question. I believe they're going to ask you questions like, why did you select this organization out of all the organizations in the Tampa Bay area? Why this organization? These are questions that you need to prepare yourself for. I'm a firm believer that we need to talk about what it is that brought me to this chair as it relates to why I want to work for your organization. They're going to ask you, if given the chance to be hired today, what is your expectation of our organization? Because we're going to tell you what's your expectation of us if you're fortunate enough to be hired today. They're going to ask you, where would you like to be in the next 5 years? We need to be ready. A lot of times people are just too direct in answering questions like that. We need to visit centers that would help us prepare ourselves to get ready to answer questions like that. I'm a firm believer that I want to sell you to that. I would love to be a part of your organization. And I know with the proper guidance and leadership that possibly one day I can be in a managerial capacity. These are what companies are looking for. This is the type of information and feedback companies are looking for. Also, there comes a part in the stage of that interview where questions are asked. You have the opportunity to ask questions. And a lot of people will sit there, I don't know, I call them perfection people, perfect individuals, which there's no perfect individual. So sometimes I'm confused. So maybe you can help me out and stop me from being so confused. What do you think? Should questions be asked at the end of the interview? Do you have any questions? What would be your response? What's one of the questions that you would ask an employee?
One that I probably would ask is, when should I expect that this position would be filled?
Excellent, because you're in a job search and you want to make sure that you understand the timeline of deciding on when this job is going to be filled. Because maybe there's some other things that you need to do. Because when you're on a job search, I can understand this would probably be not your first stop. This would probably be one of the stops that you'll be doing in your job search. It won't be your first and it won't be your last. So this opportunity here is to make sure that you get the proper feedback of knowing that a decision will be made at this time. So possibly we can pick it back off of that by saying, is it possible if I don't hear from your organization, may I follow up? It's your responsibility to follow up. But make sure you follow up after the timeline, a time date set that we will be making a decision of filling this position. Yes, ma'am.
Should someone ask, what's the salary or what's your medical benefits at that time in the interview to the employer? Would that be a question to ask?
First of all, I would assume that we have looked at the job announcement and there is a salary listed. If not, it could possibly be one of your questions. But we want to make sure that we put it in a way that it's not direct. We may want to phrase it as saying, yes, is it possible that you can tell me the starting salary for this position? To kind of get a figure thrown out on the table. Or the salary that I read in the announcement, is it negotiable? Because here and now, you need to make a decision whether or not you want to accept this job. Because sometimes all of us have what we call responsibilities. And one of the biggest responsibilities is financial responsibilities. And we want to make sure that when we do accept a job, we're accepting a job is going to make sure that we can fulfill these responsibilities that we have. So sometimes, and that's the individual, again, judgmental calls, because some companies, they stand firm with both feet, and sometimes you have to stand firm with both feet. And I would suggest that you be honest, like the young lady mentioned earlier in the program, and say, your offer at this time, thank you very much, but I won't be able to accept it due to my current financial obligations. But it's been a pleasure talking with you today, and maybe again in the future. Any other feedback that you can give me on questions? We want to make sure that we ask questions that's going to make sure that we make a decision whether or not I want to work for your organization. I can remember applying for a job, and one of my interviews, I asked the question, is it possible that I can take a tour of your company after this interview? And my main reason is that I'm a very professional individual, and I like for my working environment to be professional. And I like to walk around your company to sometimes to see how your employees present themselves, and whether or not I want to be a part of this environment and definitely a part of this company or organization. So you just want to make sure that when you finalize this, that when you walk out of here, you have a full concept of this is the organization that I would want to work for. Now, in closing that interview, what do you think are some of the most important things that you can do to let that employer know that this is the job that I want? Yes,
I would say the most important thing, or the first thing I would do, is thank them for the interview, for inviting you to come in for that particular interview.
It's always good to thank people. People remember that. Thank you very much for taking this opportunity this morning or this afternoon and interviewing me. It's been a pleasure learning about your company and giving me the opportunity to present myself to your organization. That's very important. We want to make sure that we give a firm handshake at the end. We want to make sure that we look at that on eye contact. And I would go even further in asking for a business card. What would one of the reasons be for asking for a business card?
So you can follow up?
Yes. You always want to follow up with that employer. A lot of times, phone calls just don't do, because we must realize, just like they're interviewing you, they have other appointments to possibly interview other people that's interested for this position. So that means that maybe I can send an email, or maybe I'm going to stop to the nearest store where I can pick up a card. And I would suggest, a lot of people say, well, it's very expensive. A tip, maybe the Family Dollar store. They have some nice cards, thank you cards there. Just make sure, and I like cards that I can put writing into, not just the words. I want to say thank you very much, again, for taking this opportunity to interview me today. Looking forward to hearing from you, Julius Colley. And I may not have money to buy a stamp, but I'm going to take it back and give it to that receptionist and say, please give this to Mr. Colley, or please give this to Miss Colley, because I want he or she to know that I'm really thankful for them for taking the time out to interview me. Yes, ma'am.
How soon will you send a thank you card?
I would send a thank you card the same day if possible, because you don't want too much time to lapse, because they may forget you. Because 7 or 8 interviews after you, Mr. Colley, no, I want to keep this refreshed on your mind. I want to make sure if there's a thought process that I'm on the back burner, I want to make sure you just cut that back burner off and put me on the front burner. So we want to make sure that we stay aware of that. We want to make sure that we cover all of those little loopholes in that interviewing process, and believe in yourself. You're a very important product. There's no other product out there on the market is better than you. And I call it self-confidence. It's not being cocky. Self-confidence goes a long way. I like to claim things. This is my job. The cliches of, I may not get the job, these are fears. Leave them alone. If I don't have a job and I go on an interview and don't get the job, at least I got some great experience. I'm not worried about what I'm wearing as long as I'm professionally dressed. My job is to go out and get a job, and the end result is to become self-sufficient. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to be taking a break, and we'll be back in a few. Thank you.